We want to turn now to weather and that deadly storm slamming Southern California, the worst in many years. Those epic drenching rains sending this San Bernardino fire truck cascading down into a sinkhole, and in Studio City, a sinkhole swallowing this car. Intense rains causing some treacherous moments behind the wheel. Check this out in Glendale. A garage more like a waterfall than a place to park.
San Bernardino firefighters escaping from their truck just in time to watch this. Their fire engine plummeting when the freeway it's parked on crumbles. The roadway eroded by intense flooding from one of the most powerful storms to hit Southern California in years. The firefighters were here to check on the driver of that semi that plunged off the same interstate. You can see just how far both vehicles fell. But incredibly, the firefighters and the driver of that semi are all okay. Another close call in this Los Angeles suburb. This massive sinkhole opening, swallowing this SUV. Rescuers finding the driver standing on her upside-down car, screaming for help. Then, just minutes after pulling her to safety, this.
There it goes.
I turned around for 1 second, and then the second car fell into the sinkhole.
Both drivers are okay, but in other parts of Southern California, at least 4 people were killed, including a man electrocuted by fallen power lines and a driver whose vehicle became submerged in the fast-rising flood water.
2 vehicles in the water and subjects still in the car. You need someone with rescue ropes.
Other roadways also washed away by more than 8 inches of rain in some places.
I've never seen it like this around here.
The downpours creating a waterfall in this parking garage. The storm bringing wind gusts up to 50 miles per hour, uprooting trees, tearing the roof off this tractor trailer, and knocking out power to at least 76,000 customers in Los Angeles County alone.
Heavy rains that hit Southern California were caused by a phenomenon that's sometimes called a weather bomb.
The word bomb is short for a legitimate meteorological term called bombogenesis. It has to do with the strength of a storm. So a 1 millibar drop per hour, that's the technical definition of a bomb storm.
A huge storm that landed over Southern California eased off on Saturday as new storms took aim on Northern California. Flash flood warnings have been canceled by the National Weather Service in Southern California, but the northern regions are facing a weekend of heavy rains and winds similar to what already struck in the area earlier this week. The storm could cause more problems for communities surrounding Lake Oroville Dam, where nearly 200,000 people were forced to evacuate last weekend.
There's a good chance you drive over a bridge that's in need of repair. A new study from the American Road and Transportation Builders Association found nearly 10% of all U.S. bridges have some structural deficiency. And this isn't a new issue. A 2013 infrastructure report card from the American Society of Civil Engineers gave the U.S. a D+. Both evaluations came from organizations that would benefit from building more roads and bridges, but the findings are on par with bridge inspection data from the Federal Highway Administration. And we have seen a number of high-profile infrastructure failures in recent years. Heavy rains caused the Oroville Dam in California to overflow, tearing holes in its spillways. Officials weren't sure if the dam would hold up and evacuated nearly 200,000 people. In 2015, an Amtrak train derailed near Philadelphia, killing 8 and injuring more than 200. Though the train's conductor was deemed responsible, officials said a missing speed regulator on the track could have prevented the wreck. President Donald Trump has pledged to unveil a new infrastructure plan worth up to $1 trillion during his first 100 days in office.
India's only live volcano in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands has started spewing ash and lava yet again. Now, scientists of the Goa-based National Institute of Oceanography confirmed that after lying dormant for nearly 150 years, the barren island volcano has erupted last in 1991, has now been showing sporadic activity since then.
An antibiotic-resistant superbug will be launched on a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket Saturday from the same Cape Canaveral pad where the first manned mission to the moon lifted off. The superbug will be studied by astronauts on the International Space Station. Working in conjunction with NASA, lead researcher Dr. Anita Goel hopes that by sending MRSA bacteria to a zero-gravity environment, we can better understand how superbugs mutate to become resistant to available antibiotics.
This past Tuesday was National Donor Day. It's held every February 14th to raise awareness of the life-saving benefits of organ, eye, and tissue donation. Tonight, about 120,000 Americans are on the national transplant waiting list. In China, population 1.4 billion, there is a severe shortage of organ donors. Adriana Diaz shows us how science is bridging the gap.
Scientists here are working on a possible breakthrough to restore sight. But the eyes they're using aren't human. They're from pigs.
So these are actual eyeballs from pigs?
Yes.
I feel like they're all looking at me.
Well, you don't have to look at it.
Zhang Kangshao is CEO of China Regenerative Medicine International, the company pioneering the procedure that makes pig corneas suitable for human transplant.
We do try, many, animals. Finally, we conclude, the pig's cornea is very similar to the human.
Organ donations are rare in China. By tradition here, bodies should be left intact. But with 4 million Chinese with cornea disease, demand far outstrips the corneas available. Now surgeons like Wei Yunshi deal in swine daily. So far, doctors have performed 400 cornea transplants with a 95% success rate.
When your patients come in and you propose giving them a cornea from a pig, what's their reaction?
We don't usually say it's from a pig, he told us. We say it's an engineered product.
But it's from a pig, 是从一个猪来的.
If we said that, some would refuse it, he said, though others probably wouldn't care, as long as they're cured.
Norma McCorvey, known as Jane Roe in the U.S. Supreme Court decision Roe v. Wade, has died. She was 69. McCorvey was 22, single, poor, and suffering from addiction when she became pregnant with her third child. What followed changed the course of American history and McCorvey for years to come. McCorvey was a pro-abortion rights advocate after the Roe v. Wade ruling, but she eventually became a born-again Christian and opposed abortions later in life. She died of a heart condition at an assisted living facility in Katy, Texas. She's survived by her daughter and 2 grandchildren.
Не пугайте BBC, британского фаната. Спокон веку на Руси, гостям мы очень рады. Ойся, ты меня не бойся, я тебя не трону, ты не беспокойся. Англичанин говорит, страшно ехать в Рашу, ты не бойся, приезжай, нету места краше. Ойся, ты меня не бойся, я тебя не трону, ты не беспокойся. Ойся. Все нормально будет, приезжайте.
Just ahead of this year's Munich Security Conference, the organizers released their annual report on key issues on international security, entitled Post-Truth, Post-West, Post-Order. The report alleged that international security is arguably more volatile today than at any point since World War II. Growing concerns include the rise of populists and anti-globalists in the West, mass disinformation challenging informed public debate, growing favor of authoritarianism solutions from citizens of democracies, and terrorism largely evoked by instability in the Middle East.
This was the first chance for the new US Vice President to address many of the world's leading politicians. So far, they've discussed the future of the West and whether NATO still has a role to play. These were issues Mike Pence dealt with directly.
The fates of the United States and Europe are intertwined. Your struggles are our struggles. Your success is our success. And ultimately, we walk into the future together. This is President Trump's promise. We will stand with Europe today and every day because we are bound together by the same noble ideals: freedom, democracy, justice, and the rule of law.
But with those warm words came another message. NATO countries must pay their fair share. That is a familiar refrain for the German hosts of this conference. Military partnership with the US remains the bedrock of their security. Several thousand German soldiers are deployed in Lithuania, helping to secure one of NATO's easternmost borders. German Chancellor Angela Merkel has already said she'll increase defence spending as part of a wider EU decision to do the same. For her, the watchword was multilateralism.
Feststehende internationale Ordnung und auch
what we have today is a world where there is no fixed international global order. And in spite of the Cold War, the relationship with Russia is as yet, I say this from a European perspective, is not as it should be. Now, these challenges of the world today cannot be mastered by one state alone. It needs a cooperative effort, and this means we have to forge ahead with multilateral structures.
For his part, the Russian foreign minister had some harsh words for NATO countries. Sergei Lavrov called the Atlantic Alliance a Cold War institution. He said a new world order is needed. Regarding Ukraine, he felt only full implementation of the Minsk agreement, which aims to secure a ceasefire, could solve the crisis. He said only by talking problems through could the world solve them.
Right now, we need dialogue more than ever on all difficult issues. We need to find compromises. Games are useless. Russia is not looking for conflicts with anyone, but will always be able to protect its interests.
With regard to Ukraine, we must hold Russia accountable and demand that they honor the Minsk agreements, beginning by de-escalating the violence in eastern Ukraine. And know this, the United States will continue to hold Russia accountable.
He said that Washington would continue to hold Russia accountable if the spiral of violence in Ukraine continued. However, he added that President Trump is searching for new ways to cooperate with Moscow.
Saturday, Germany, France, Russia, and Ukraine have agreed to use their influence to implement a ceasefire and the withdrawal of heavy weapons from Monday in eastern Ukraine. Fighting and tension has recently grown between Ukrainian forces and Russian-backed separatists in the region. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said after talks with his Ukrainian, German, and French counterparts in Munich, on February 20th the ceasefire regime will start and withdrawal of heavy military hardware will also start. We have actively supported this decision and obviously expressed a conviction that this time, failure should not be allowed to take place.
Iran's Islamic Revolution Guard Corps is set to launch a fresh round of military drills in an effort to boost the capabilities of its forces.
We're going to have the military drills codenamed the Great Prophet 11 in central and southeastern Iran. The exercises are slated to be conducted from February 20th to 22nd.
Pakpur said rockets and long-range artillery will be tested on the first day of the drills. According to the Iranian commander, the troops will hone their civil defense skills on the second day. The third day will engage in infantry units as well as special commandos. Elsewhere, in his remarks, Brigadier General Pakpur said Tehran has been sending military advisors to certain countries at those countries' requests. He then warned U.S. officials over threatening to take military action against Iran. Pakpur said the White House is unlikely to wage in such a war as it would be irrational to do so.
U.S. senators have put forward a measure to impose fresh sanctions on Iran's aviation sector. The Republican lawmaker Marco Rubio has introduced a bill which accuses Iran of using commercial aircraft to support terrorism. The bill would require the Treasury Department to impose new sanctions against designated Iranian commercial airlines. The U.S. administration would also have to report the possible use of commercial aircraft to support Iranian armed forces and the Syrian government, among others. The U.S. sanctions on Iran's aviation sector were removed under the nuclear deal signed between Iran and the P5+1 in 2015.
Chinese Navy training formation comprising 3 warships, including a guided missile destroyer, has wrapped up a week of training in the South China Sea. Exercises included sudden attack drills and were carried out successfully in poor sea conditions. The fleet will now sail towards the eastern Indian Ocean.
U.S. carrier group patrols intense South China Sea. United States aircraft carrier strike group has begun patrols in the South China Sea amid growing tension with China over control of the disputed waterway and concerns it could become a flashpoint under the new U.S. administration. China's foreign ministry on Wednesday warned Washington against challenging its sovereignty in the South China Sea. The U.S. Navy said the force, including Nimitz-class aircraft carrier USS Carl Vinson, began routine operations in the South China Sea on Saturday. The announcement was posted on the Vinson's Facebook page. The strike group's commander, Rear Admiral James Kilby, said that weeks of training in the Pacific had improved the group's effectiveness and readiness. We are looking forward to demonstrating those capabilities while building upon existing strong relationships with our allies, partners and friends in the Indo-Asia-Pacific region, he was quoted as saying by the Navy News Service. Friction between the United States and China over trade and territory under U.S. President Donald Trump have increased concerns that the South China Sea could become a flashpoint.
The German Chancellor Angela Merkel says that the European Union has an obligation to accept refugees.
We have a responsibility. The European Union has a responsibility to bear. Accepting those refugees, fighting the root causes of flight. We as Germany have shouldered this responsibility together with a number of other European member states. Unfortunately, within the European Union, we have not found a common position on this issue.
Addressing the Munich Security Conference, Merkel one more time expressed support for asylum seekers and called on EU states to help the refugees coming to Europe. The German Chancellor, who is critical of a U.S. travel ban on Muslims and immigrants, noted that Islam is not the source of terrorism, but rather the problem lies within a false understanding of it. Merkel pointed out that the bloc is in a difficult condition due to Brexit. She urged European countries to stay unified and warned not to go it alone. Merkel added that the EU should also do more to preserve and strengthen its defense.
Now, far-right Dutch politician Geert Wilders has launched his campaign for the upcoming parliamentary elections by reiterating his anti-Islam views.
Look how many security measures have to be taken. Is this the Netherlands that we want to have in every street, in every city in the next decades? I don't think so. We want to stay free. We want to have no terrorism and no criminal acts anymore. And that's, once again, we should beat the immigration and the Islamization, spend the money here, retain the key of our own front door.
The founding congress of a new leftist group called Italian Left kicked off on Saturday in Rimini, a small central Italy's town on the Adriatic Sea. Before becoming a full-fledged political party, Italian Left was a federation launched in 2015 as a parliamentary group in the lower house of parliament. It included Left Ecology Freedom Party, dissidents from the ruling Democratic Party and splinters from the anti-establishment Five Star Movement. The newborn leftist group is calling for a more egalitarian welfare state, effective income redistribution policies and labor rules that give dignity back to workers. Sinistra Italiana leaders are also stressing the need to reform the European Union, which they say has endorsed the ruthless free market economy, which has brought many citizens to their knees and forced companies out of business.
The European Union cannot continue this way. I'll tell you what, the EU's principles go against those contained in our constitution. Either the EU is reformed or we will have to consider alternative actions, including leaving the Eurozone, even though it's too early to say.
As the protests then against police brutality in France continue to rage, the government now has passed a controversial law giving police greater powers to literally open fire.
These new laws bring the powers of the police much more in line with the paramilitary gendarmerie here in France, which means that the police will now have the ability to shoot a suspect that is fleeing or a detainee, but only after they have given them 2 warnings. Now, it will also allow the officers who are on duty to shoot at vehicles as they're fleeing the scene or to try and stop a rampage killing. Now, these powers come at a time when France is seeing protests across the country, but particularly here in Paris, violent protests at times. Now, these protests have been ongoing for 2 weeks in the city, and it's hoped that these powers will give the police more ability to be able to deal with some of the violent protests and riots that we've been witnessing over the last 2 weeks.
On Saturday, Turkish Interior Minister Süleyman Soylu announced that the police had apprehended 26 people in association with the attack. The incident took place on Friday evening when a car bomb went off in the southeastern Turkish city of Aranşehir. The vehicle was remotely detonated in the garden of a housing complex where judges and prosecutors resided. 17 people were injured and an 11-year-old boy and a security guard were killed. Salute told reporters the vehicle had been detonated just as the security guard who saw it being parked was about to intervene with a gun, killing him. He continued, saying that 14 buildings were damaged in the blast as well.
A hunt across Pakistan. The military and police are arresting anyone thought to be connected to the suicide bombing in Sehwan Sharif. At the same time, the Pakistani government is lashing out at Afghanistan, closing borders, firing into Afghan territory. ISIL says it's behind the attack on the Sufi shrine in Sindh province. Pakistan accuses its neighbor of harboring fighters from the armed group. Afghanistan says the firing has been indiscriminate.
We generally welcome any operations from the other side of the border if it is aimed at ISIL or other groups that create problems. But there was no coordination with us. Rockets were fired on civilian homes.
Inside Pakistan, anger is raw over the attack and the government's handling of the aftermath.
Locals here are complaining that the security was bad. Hospitals were also bad. People died, and a lot of the injured also died. Also, they don't have electricity.
Finally, two men who met not by accident, but rather in an accident. One saving the other's life.
I'm on the freeway, and the weather's bad.
Collision, and the flames begin.
And I hear, get out of the car is on fire.
And Antonio Wainwright swings open the driver's side door, falling partway out, but then realizing he is still pinned inside, a smashed ankle keeping him down.
I'm just screaming in agonizing pain as I'm watching vehicles drive by, and I'm thinking, I'm about to die.
But one of them stopped.
As I got closer, I could see the flames starting.
Out of nowhere, I feel someone grab the back of my jacket and says, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay, buddy.
Seconds later, the car was gone, but not Antonio. He is still here, thanks to one man's reflex.
I'm going to be able to enjoy life and enjoy every moment that he's given me. I feel like he was God sent to me.
Nice, since Antonio is about to become a dad. Just like Sean, by the way. Can he explain why he helped? No, but also, yes.
No, just did it. I didn't really think about it. Just doing a good thing. I would hope someone would do the same for me.
A story giving reason to hope exactly that.